So in this session, we'll be discussing access modifiers in Java. And access modifiers are basically, these are keywords. These are the keywords: private, protected, public, or default or friendly. So with the variables and functions of the class, we can write private. Like in main function, we write public. So similarly, when we create our own class, those class variables or those class functions can be declared as private, protected, public, or default. If we do not mention anything, any of these private, protected, or public, it is considered to be default or friendly. Each have a different meaning, each have different scope where the variable or function can be used and where the variable and function cannot be used. So access modifiers are keywords of Java which sets the scope of usage of the class member variables as well as the functions. In a class, we have variables and functions. So these variables and functions we can declare as private, public, protected, and that will have a special meaning to those variables that we'll be discussing today with examples. Access modifiers are used at the time of declaration of variables and function to specify the scope of the variable and function. We set the scope of the variable and function with the help of access modifiers. What does that mean? Let us see. A private member can only be accessed in the class where it is declared. It cannot be inherited to the child class. This part we'll be discussing later on, inheritance, then that we'll be understanding. But as of now, a private member can only be accessed in a class where it is declared. A protected member can be accessed in the class where it is declared and its child classes. Protected members are private members which have inheritable property. So until unless we discuss inheritance, some of the features of access modifiers will not be understood here, but some of them we can understand. Like a private member can only be accessed in a class where it is declared, and a public member can be accessed anywhere inside the class, outside the class, in child class. So there are three places in object-oriented programming: the class itself, then outside the class, some other classes, and then the child classes. So a private member can only be accessed in the class where it is declared. A protected member can be accessed in the class where it is declared as well as its child class, and a public member can be accessed anywhere inside the class, outside the class, or in the child class. And member which is declared without any modifier, we do not write public, private, protected, then it becomes friendly or default. Such members can be used only in the package where it is declared. So that will be understood when we will be declaring the package. So let us come to the example. We'll try to run the program and see what does this mean. I'll write a new program. Suppose we have a class here. We have a class here. Class is suppose C1, just to understand. And in this class, we have a function void f1. This is a function. And we have another function void f2. We'll try to keep it simple. And this function will be writing as private, and this function will be writing as public. So since we have not learned the inheritance, we'll be only concentrating on private and public. So we have a function f1, we have a function f2. One function is private, one function is public. And now we'll write system.out.println. This is f1. If we call this function, it will only print this is f1. And similarly, we'll have one output statement here. This will bring, this is F2. So this is a class. This class has two functions, F1 and F2. F1 function is a private function and F2 function is a public function. Now in the program, we type public static. Here we'll try to create the object of the class C1. C1 obj is equals to C1. So now we have the object, and with this object, if we try to call F1, you can see in this list F1 is not visible. So it cannot write F1. If we write F1, this will give error. Why? Because this F1 function can only be used inside this class. This is a private member. So what we have learned, private member can be accessed only the class where it is. So it can be only used within this boundary of class C1. This cannot be used here. And public, this we can use F2. See, F2 is coming in the IntelliSense. And now if we try to compile the program, this line will give error. Why this line will give error? Because F1 is declared to be private, that is, it is declared to be only used within the class C1. So let us try to run this program and see what is the error that is coming. So if we try to run the program, SC is never used. This will be here. The method F1 from type C1 is not visible. Line number 17. So in line number 17, if we see what is there, line number 17, you can see in line number 17, it is written method F1 from the type C1, from the class C1. So this is not visible here. The compiler cannot see this function. Why? Because this function is declared to be private function. So if we want to use this private function outside the class, there is one situation where we can make it also public. So if we make it also public, then that error is gone. And now if we compile the program, then you can see that we get the output. This is F1, this is F2. You can see both the output is coming. This is F1, this is F2. Why? Because we have called F1 and F2 and now the error has been resolved because this has been declared as public. So if we keep it private, then this function is not visible outside this boundary of the class C1. It is only visible inside. So it cannot be called, it cannot be used from outside. So what we'll do, we'll have to remove this, otherwise it will continue giving error. So why do we create a public function? If it is not usable, why will we create? That is one question. So when we create a private function, if it is not accessible from outside, then how will we will be accessing it? So a private function is accessed only in the from the public function. So now if we write F1 here, what is happening? F1 is being called from within this class C1. So now we can call this function, and from outside what we are doing, we are calling the function F2. So function F2 will be called from outside, and once it goes inside, then this F2 can now access F1. So indirectly we can call. In programming, whatever things we want to only being used within the class are declared to be private, and those things which are to be used from outside the class, those things are declared to be public. And private members are accessed from the public members of the class. It cannot be used from outside directly. So important thing here that is to be understood is that why will we create a private member function when it is not uh, uh, useful from outside the class? So there are situations where private functions are created so that it can be used from the public functions. Here in this example, we have in this class C1, we have a function F1 that is private. This private F1 function cannot be called from outside the class, but it can be called from inside the class. Here we have to understand that when we call a function of a class from outside the class, we require object of the class. Here we cannot write F2 directly. Here if we write F2, then it will be giving error. As you can see, F2 is not defined, and because once we write F2, it will try to search it in example2 class, in this class, and since in this class F2 is not available, so it will not go outside to search where F2 is available. So in such situation, we have to create object of the class, and then that object will be calling the function. So public function of class can be called from another class with the help of object of the class, but private functions can be called directly. When we call F1 here, it is called directly. We do not need object of the class. So that is one difference. Now we'll see a practical situation where we will be using a private function and where we'll be using a public function. So I'll create one more example, example 3.7. And here in this we'll create a class. This class will have two variables. These two variables will be declared as private. So these are private variables. Then we have a function private. Private. class will have one object obj is equals to the object and obj dot set values inverse numbers on obj. यहाँ पर देखते हैं, अब देखिए यहाँ पर वी हैव अ मैथ्स क्लास। इस मैथ्स क्लास का हम लोगों ने एक ऑब्जेक्ट बनाया ओबीजे। ये जो मैथ्स क्लास का हम लोग ऑब्जेक्ट बनाएंगे, इस ऑब्जेक्ट के अंदर वेरिएबल्स कौन कौन मिलेगा, n1 n2 s and a। n1 n2 आर द टू नंबर्स, s is for sum and a is for average। तो यहाँ पर हम लोग दिखा रहे हैं n1 n2 s and a। जब हम लोग सेट वैल्यूज फंक्शन को कॉल करेंगे, इस प्रोग्राम में हम लोग दो नंबर का एवरेज निकालना है। इसके लिए ये प्रोग्राम हम लोग बनाया। तो दो नंबर जो होगा उसको पहले सेट करना पड़ेगा, बताना पड़ेगा कौन सा दो नंबर है। उसके लिए हम लोगों ने एक सेट वैल्यूज नाम का फंक्शन बनाया है। ये सेट वैल्यूज फंक्शन को हम लोग पब्लिक बनाते हैं। और यहाँ पर देखिए, जब हम लोग सेट वैल्यूज फंक्शन में 10 और 20 भेज रहे हैं, तो ये 10 और 20 ए और बी में जाकर के सेट होगा और वहां से ये चला जाएगा n1 में और n2 में। n1 का वैल्यू हो जाएगा 10 और n2 का वैल्यू हो जाएगा 20। ओके, तो यहाँ पर जब हम लोग ये सेट वैल्यूज फंक्शन को कॉल करेंगे विद वैल्यूज 10 एंड 20, तो ये सेट वैल्यूज जो है n1 n2 का वैल्यू सेट कर देगा, जैसा हम लोग यहाँ पर देख रहे हैं। n1 n2 का वैल्यू 10 एंड 20 हो जाएगा। और जब हम लोग एवरेज फंक्शन को कॉल करेंगे, तो ये एवरेज फंक्शन सम फंक्शन को इंटरनली पहले कॉल करेगा, तो ये सम का वैल्यू 30 हो जाएगा। उसके बाद ये एवरेज को कॉल करेगा, तो एवरेज निकालेगा, एवरेज इक्वल्स टू 30/2 दैट्स 15, और फिर ये एवरेज को प्रिंट कर देगा। हियर व्हाट वी हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग, वी क्रिएट अ पब्लिक फंक्शन or a public variable when that member of the class is to be accessed by the user, and we create a private variable or a private function when we need those functions or those members to be accessed by the public functions। यहाँ पर देखिए, एवरेज फंक्शन को हम लोग यूज कर रहे हैं, इसलिए एवरेज फंक्शन इज पब्लिक। सम फंक्शन को हम लोग नहीं यूज कर रहे हैं, कौन यूज कर रहे हैं, एवरेज फंक्शन यूज कर रहे हैं, इसलिए सम फंक्शन इज डिक्लेयर्ड एज प्राइवेट। यहाँ पर देखिए, किसी भी वेरिएबल को हम लोगों ने डायरेक्टली नहीं एक्सेस किया है, इसलिए वेरिएबल्स आर डिक्लेयर्ड एज प्राइवेट। सो ऑल दोज मेंबर्स व्हिच आर टू बी यूज्ड बाय द फंक्शंस, those are declared to be private, and all those members which are to be used by the user, जो फंक्शन या जो वेरिएबल को यूजर एक्सेस करेगा, यूजर कॉल करेगा, उन सबको वी हैव टू डिक्लेयर एज प्राइवेट एज पब्लिक। सो दिस इज द डेफिनेशन ऑफ पब्लिक एंड प्राइवेट। जावा के अंदर दो मॉडिफायर और होता है, जिसको हम लोग कहते हैं प्रोटेक्टेड और डिफॉल्ट। प्रोटेक्टेड इज ओनली यूज्ड इन केस ऑफ inheritance। तो जब हम लोग inheritance पढ़ेंगे, there we will cover some examples on protected। If there is no inheritance, then the private and protected are same। There is no difference. Without inheritance, private and protected are considered to be same. और जब हम लोग पैकेज पढ़ेंगे तब हम लोग डिफॉल्ट एक्सेस मॉडिफायर्स को पढ़ेंगे. तो यहाँ पर व्हाट वी हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड इज दैट public are usually functions, private are usually variables. Public are those members which are accessed by the user or which has to be accessed from outside, and private are those members which are to be accessed from within the class, and those functions or variables are usually accessed by the function that is not accessed directly by the user. Okay, thank you very much.